Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome into the Farzy show here at the Steven Singer Studios. So much to get to today. We got the Phillies going on there, sort of. Well, at least their offense isn't going on. We got the Sixers to get to. We got Joel Embiid to get to in particular when it comes to those 76ers. And Joe Girardi's post-game comments after falling to the Mets and basically falling to 500. So that's just a whole bunch of fun, isn't it, in the baseball world? And the lack of respect for Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, as a matter of fact. We're going to get to all of that and more, including a couple of bets that I made last night in our Big Bet segment, brought to you by DraftKings. I went for the Joel Embiid over last night. I figured that was a pretty safe bet for big bets. I made a nice little big bet on it. Nice little big bet? Yeah, sure, that makes sense. Anyway, let's start it off with the positive. Joel Embiid is very good at basketball. Joel Embiid is the MVP of this season. And last night, I was blown away with his performance. And you might say maybe his 50-point performance was the best performance you have seen from him. Last night was at least one of the best performances I have ever seen from Joel Embiid. And here's why. As they beat the Nets, they win the tiebreaker. They take 2 or 3 from the Nets throughout the season. So if they end in a tie, they get the tiebreaker. They get home court advantage in the playoffs. Here's what was so amazing to me about Joel Embiid. I thought he was hurt last night. And I know Doris Burke mentioned it during the broadcast about a time he said that he came down awkwardly. Watching him throughout the game, really, I thought something was bothering him. From the jump, really. He looked like he was laboring. He looked like he was trying to give, I don't know, as little effort as possible, because I don't know if he was winded, if he was tired, if he was hurt. Something looked wrong with Joel Embiid. And after the first quarter, I thought to myself, there's something going on here. I don't know what it is. Maybe he's just trying to gut it out because he knows that his team is trying to clinch home court advantage and take the season series with the Nets. He knows everything that's on the line. It's a nationally televised game. Something's wrong here. And then I looked at the stat sheet. And I think he had 10 or 12 points after the first quarter. I went, well, he seems fine on the stat sheet. And that's the difference between watching the numbers and then watching the game. And in the game, he looked like he was really picking and choosing his spots as to when to exert that energy. You really didn't see any power moves till late in the second quarter when he started to go after DeAndre Jordan a little bit. Got fouled, wasn't called. You saw he was frustrated a little bit. Then I think it was in the third quarter, it was in that second quarter that you saw him come down awkwardly. And then maybe he had a couple more bursts of energy after that, maybe 2 at most in that second quarter. But he just didn't look right. And in a game where he really didn't look right for 4 quarters and really picked and chose his spots, came away with 39 points. That, to me, is the definition of an MVP. When he doesn't really have it that particular night, but he finds a way to get it. Like we always talk about great teams finding a way to win no matter what. Great players find a way to get theirs no matter what. And he wasn't getting to the foul line early in this game. It wasn't until later he started going to the charity stripe often. And that's where he gets a lot of his points from. So that wasn't even part of his repertoire last night. It was hitting threes. The other thing, he was hanging around the three-point line, around the top of the key, more than he usually does. And maybe last year and the year before that, you could maybe give him that criticism that he was out on the perimeter too much, hanging out the top of the key too much because he was out of shape and he didn't want to. I heard Tim Legler say this on ESPN last year. I never even thought about it. Just the shorter distance. He doesn't have to go as far back on defense if he's just hanging out on the top of the key. And that's what it looked like to me last night. When I saw that, I said, something's off here. He hasn't done this since last year, hang out that much up there. But, man, he shook it off and, again, found a way to get his, and that was just such a remarkable performance from Joel Embiid last night. I am just astounded by it, and it's one of the best performances I have seen from him all year. And I know you might say he's going up against DeAndre Jordan, he's going up against young guys trying to make a name for himself, whatever. But just watching him play that game last night was spectacular. And to find a way to get his points was great. And the people at the Wells Fargo Center, courtesy of Sixers Instagram, we have this clip here. The people at the Wells Fargo Center let Joel Embiid hear it last night. I can't wait for that to be just 20,000 people just going bonkers. And I think I told you, I'm actually, my buddy Bennett and I, he asked me if I wanted to go to the game at the end of the month. I'm going to the game at the end of the month. I'm actually going to a sporting event for the first time in, dude, a long, long time. Well over a year. Actually, the last time I was at a sporting event, it was a Sixers game. So looking forward to going back. I can't wait till it's 20,000, though, again, chanting MVP, MVP, MVP. And Joel Embiid certainly should be that. And I know I tweeted it out yesterday during the game that basically Joel Embiid is the MVP of this season. Anything to the contrary is a lie. And then, Jokic, Nikola Jokic, right. Yeah, it's adorable. Yes, Joel Embiid has missed time with injury. Good job. Way to do some research on that, folks. He sometimes misses games because of injury. But in terms of the best player in the NBA this season, on the best team, one of the best teams at least, that's Joel Embiid. Jokic is great, and I'm not saying he's not going to finish second. I'm not saying he sucks. Just Joel Embiid does everything on the basketball court for this basketball team. And you see such a change in dynamic when watching Joel Embiid play this game and when he is not playing this game for the Sixers, how much everything changes. And last night was a great example of knowing that his team needed him, and he gutted. I thought it was a gutty performance from Joel Embiid. Tobias Harris got his, about 24 last night in the win. Ben Simmons had 17. Other guys were contributing, but everything was run through Joel Embiid through last night's game. And there were some moments, especially in that fourth quarter. Sixers actually lost the fourth quarter to the Brooklyn Nets last night as they started to come back from down 22 points, I believe was the Sixers' largest lead of the night. And you saw Joel Embiid fight for that. You saw Ben Simmons fighting, being aggressive, attacking the rim. And it's funny, we talk about always Ben Simmons has got to be aggressive. We didn't see the aggression early from Joel Embiid, but we saw a lot of aggression from Ben Simmons throughout this game, really. And I thought he played a pretty damn good game last night. Again, Tobias Harris got his. Seth Curry, okay. Danny Green, whatever. Shake Milton had a weird game. And I'm really looking forward to seeing Dwight Howard, who was hurt last night, actually couldn't play for the Sixers last night for the first time in his Sixers tenure. I'm really looking forward to George Hill, Dwight Howard, and Shake Milton in that second unit coming off the bench for the Sixers. And that is probably going to be what you're going to be getting used to with guys off the bench. Matisse Thybulle will get some run for his defensive capabilities, obviously. But really, you're looking at a three-man bench. And I'm looking forward to seeing what that will bring us when it comes to George Hill, who was shooting around again yesterday before the game, which was good to see. But Shake Milton kind of played weird, especially late in this game. A couple of weird plays, had a bad turnover. I think it was before the half with Kyrie Irving all over him. And he had an opportunity, passed up an open three opportunity because I think still 4 seconds were on the clock. He wanted to milk it a little bit further. He ends up getting it stolen. Actually, yeah, it's right before the half. Kyrie Irving actually ends up stealing the basketball from him, going the other way. It was just a really weird game. He had another weird foul with Kyrie Irving driving on him. It was odd for Shake Milton. But overall, as a team, they did what they needed to do. They, of course, took their foot off the gas in that fourth quarter. That just made you kind of go, this shouldn't be happening. Kevin Durant's not in this game. James Harden's not in this game. LaMarcus Aldridge's not in this game. Blake Griffin not in this game. What is happening to the 76ers squad? They did exactly what they had to do to win. They didn't cover, depending on how you got them. I think last I saw on DraftKings, they were -8 going into tip-off. So I actually stayed away from that and focused more on Joel Embiid's point total. But it was a great game, particularly for Joel Embiid, and it was good to start off with such a positive note for the 76ers. And the one thing I will say is that it is very troublesome when I think the Nets starting five is played together 7 games, and the Sixers are still struggling putting them in the far rear view mirror, if you will. That just shows you the upper echelon of talent in the Eastern Conference, and then there's just you got like the Bucks, and you got like the Sixers, and you got the Nets, and then everyone else is kind of like, we're here. Like that's kind of what it's like. And for the Nets to be in the spot that they're in right now with the fact that they haven't had all those stars play together very often, 7 games, it's insane. And they're right here on the heels of the Sixers. A little bit worrisome, but I stick by my original comments from 2 months ago that the Nets don't want the Sixers in the playoffs. If that Eastern Conference Finals rolls around and you have the Sixers and the Nets are going to be looking at the Sixers going, we got to play that team that plays really good defense. Damn it. I still think the Nets come out of it. But at least I know the Sixers will give them a run for their money, and I'm looking forward to it. I am very much looking forward to the Sixers battling the Nets in the Eastern Conference Finals, and the stage is set. The stage is set. Can't wait for that to happen. All right. I will say it does bother me in the NBA, the back-to-backs. And I know it's a grueling schedule, and you saw a report came out from ESPN that some general managers are criticizing the league for this grueling schedule that's out there. It's aiding in players' injuries, and it's not good for the players and all that. I get it. This is what they agreed to. This is what they're doing. I hate the idea of a game where first place is on the line in the Eastern Conference. Any conference, first place on the line, nationally televised game, and Kevin Durant can't play in a back-to-back. That just blows my mind that that's the day and age that we're in, and I'll never get used to that. I know that, that's the way they play today. And when I was even saying it yesterday, a couple people hit me up on social media saying, Marc, it's a national game, everyone's playing. Yeah. About a couple hours later, you get the report coming out, and you look down the nets, and you look down the left-hand column and all the names. You look down the right-hand column, out. Everyone's out. So you really can't take that measuring stick game, unfortunately. But what you can take out of this game is that the Sixers are in first place and they hold the tiebreak. So that's the positive you could take out of that game, and of course the Joel Embiid performance. Let's talk some Phillies offense. Oh, let me mention this. Kevin Kinkead from crossingbroad.com will join the show coming up in a little bit here. Kevin breaks it down great. Like, he does a great job really covering all the sports in Philly, but particularly basketball, does a great job. And also the Union. The Union, can't leave them out last night, because the Union, here's what's funny about the Union, the Philadelphia Union, the soccer team, football, if you will. The Union's offense showed up last night. Unlike the team that I'm about to talk about, which is the Philadelphia Phillies, who got one run last night. Phillies got one run on a Gene Segura home run, solo home run, obviously. Something is really, really wrong with this Phillies offense. And I heard Joe Girardi kind of give a "it is what it is" answer in his press conference after the game. But the Phillies were abysmal last night, and they were looking silly in the box. And guys that I love praising for their approach at the plate, Rhys Hoskins, obviously, Alec Boehm for what he's been able to give you, JT Realmuto, not so much Bryce Harper, but guys like JT Realmuto and Alec Boehm and Rhys Hoskins, who all praise their approach at the plate. It wasn't there last night. They were looking silly. I'm still shocked that Roman Quinn started that game last night in center field with Mickey Moniak getting called up, and we'll get to that obviously in a second, but they just looked silly last night in the batter's box. And it's beyond struggling. Like, so yeah, you can talk about an offense struggling. You at least usually have one guy who's hitting the baseball. I mean, Didi Gregorius, for the most part, has been that guy throughout the very early portions of this season, 12 games this season. But I don't know what they can do. They started out the season red hot. We all know, great way to start out the year. But everything since then has just been a joke. Starting pitching has been bad. The offense has been bad. The bats have been silent. Boneheaded plays on the base paths. No better example than seeing Roman Quinn think the ball was thrown in the left field 2 games ago and try to take off for home and then get tagged out. Like, it's just ridiculous how bad this offense is playing right now. And they're really surviving, right? Surviving, not even. They're keeping their heads at water. Yeah, I don't even want to say they're above water because they're a 500 team. But they're batting .229 on the season. And that is 17th in Major League Baseball right now. So they're like a middle-of-the-pack team offensively. They feel like dead last is what they feel like, offensively speaking. So I don't know what button there is to push. I don't know. You're not going to wait for that. And we mentioned it yesterday, that hitting season, like Charlie Manuel says. Other teams are hitting. Phillies aren't hitting. And you got to look to your Bryce Harpers, your Rhys Hoskins, your JT Realmutos to snap you out of a bad slump. And Andrew McCutchen has just, he has not been good from the plate at all this year. 5 hits? At some point, you got to worry about resting him at his age. Like, that's what you have to worry about. Like, you were worried about center field. What about the corner spots? Bryce Harper isn't hitting. We know that he's not going anywhere. Forget that. But Andrew McCutchen, what are you going to do in that spot? Who are you going to bring out to play left field? I mean, we talked yesterday about Joe Girardi saying that these guys are, if we had guys that were good enough to play at the major league level, we would call them up. Well, Adam Hazley goes out with undisclosed reason, personal reasons. I wish all the best to Adam Hazley and all that. But Mickey Moniak is the guy that gets the first call up. Not Odubel Herrera, not Scott Kingery. I'm all for it. Hey, let the young guys play, see how they work out. Mickey Moniak deserves this opportunity. I hope he gets one today. So he doesn't play last night. Roman Quinn's in center field. All right. One of the things that was very telling to me last night was in the later innings, you could see this. Bryce Harper cut him off for a ball that would probably be the center fielder's ball. Andrew McCutchen took a ball that would probably be, especially with his speed, a center fielder's ball. And the corner outfielders were taking plays away from their center fielder, which I did think was interesting. Well, whether or not he would make the catch, make the play, whatever, I don't think they have any confidence in him making the throw afterwards if need be. So I don't mind those guys taking it, but I just thought it was very telling of what those guys think about their center fielder, whose job is supposed to just to get to anything he can get to. It's a very general rule of thumb for any center fielder. It's like being a free safety in football, deepest man on the field at all times. You're supposed to be, at least. So you're watching that play out last night. I just thought that was interesting, and you're watching him being lost the plate again, and I thought that was interesting that the other guys were stepping up in the way that they were. But you're talking about this outfield right now beyond the center field spot. Are you going to go to Kingery next? Are you going to go to Odubel Herrera next? We don't know how long Adam Hazley's going to be out here. I know a lot of people are looking at it and saying, well, all right, this is what they should have done earlier. This is what they should have done anyway. If Joe Girardi was true to his word, I don't think you would see Mickey Moniak up here. But with what happened with Adam Hazley, might have expedited the process. If the Phillies wanted to go with somebody that they thought would be able to come through and have that experience and then come through for them, I thought they'd go with a veteran in Odubel Herrera. Just that's guessing what the Phillies would do. That's not what I would do. What I would have done is what the Phillies did, which was bring up Moniak. So that's the guy they're given the opportunity to. Maybe Scott Kingery is that guy, although the Phillies seem pretty intent on letting him get reps in the minor leagues to really correct his swing. Same thing maybe with Odubel Herrera. Maybe they do have a semblance of hope that he can return to the player that he was 2.5 years ago. I still have my doubts. But going with the young guys is something that I'll always support, especially in this situation when you have two guys, and Kingery and Odubel Herrera have certainly had their struggles in their last really season of playing baseball for this franchise. So we'll see how it works out with the Phillies. The bats, again, the one thing that you got to look at is, I know 229 is a horrible batting average, but think about this. I don't know what it's been over the last 6 games, but you got to imagine it's been a hell of a lot lower than that. And after yesterday's performance, it just leaves me utterly confused as to who's going to be the guy to step up and actually pull these guys out of the slump that they're in. At least give me one consistent hitter in this lineup that will be able to put up numbers for you. And maybe that whole thing of hitting being contagious, maybe that'll actually happen here. And then we could all be better Phillies fans for it and all enjoy baseball again before, man, the wheels just come off the wagon. I'll be out today, by the way, in the streets. I'll be out with you fine people. We're doing a Farzy in the field. We'll be asking you about these Phillies bats and what they need to snap out of it. Maybe we'll even talk a little Joel Embiid as well as to whether or not you actually think he will get the MVP award this season. A lot of people, the naysayers, they all say it comes down to the injury. The 3-week-long injury, the 3-week long time that he missed this season due to the knee injury. I certainly think him playing in last night's game had a lot to do with that MVP award, trying to battle through. Before we move on to talk to Kevin Kinkead from Crossing Broad, I do want you to hear from Joe Girardi last night. This is courtesy of Phillies.com. Joe Girardi last night on this struggling Phillies offense.
I just don't think we're swinging the bats particularly well right now, and I think all offenses go through it from time to time. And right now, there's a lot of guys that aren't swinging well. And you hope, you're always going to have a couple guys in your lineup, and you hope the other guys can pick up when a couple guys are struggling. We have a lot of guys struggling right now. I think anytime you don't hit, Jim, it's frustrating. It's frustrating for the guys. It's frustrating for the club. But again, all teams are going to go through this at some point this year. And it looks like we're trying to get it out of the way early.
I wish that's how it worked in baseball, where you could, we struggled in April, so we'll be great. We'll be great in May. Yeah, we're fine. April struggles bring May flourishing. I don't think that's a saying, but I don't think it's how it works in baseball. I think everyone can have a down year at the same time. In the early, still very early, 12 games into it, but in the first 2 series of the season, you felt great. You felt like, wow, these bats are struggling, but the pitching has been there. when you have the guy that's the ace of your staff, your opening day starter, Aaron Nola, struggle the way he has over his last two starts, and then Zach Wheeler goes out there yesterday and overall pitches well, but gets no support in the lineup. That's where you start to really be concerned, when it seems like a trend through the first 12 games of the season and not just a little bit of a sputter. It seems like this team has been struggling for their first 12 games with the exception of maybe one or two, offensively speaking. So we'll get to more on the Phillies offense coming up in a second here. We'll also get to Peterson's night, because you do have to tip your cap to when a guy just dominates on the hill like Peterson did last night with 10 strikeouts and just pulling a string on some of these hitters, you got to tip your cap to them. So we'll get to that a little bit later in the show during our morning rush. We'll also get you, of course, our social media check-in, as we always do. We'll follow your comments on YouTube, and we got plenty more to get to when it comes to that 76ers team. But without further ado, I'm going to tell you about Steven Singer before we get to Kevin Kinkead. Steven's got something great going on right now for Mother's Day. His brand new rose color is here. And it's just around the corner for Mother's Day. It's here. Steven's, he's got your back, folks, for Mother's Day. Here's what you need to do. You need to get a famous real rose dipped in 24 karat gold, as they're in right now at Steven Singer Jewelers, and they come right now in sunshine yellow. The new rose is brilliant. It's a brilliant shade of yellow, dazzles with sparkles. And Steven wants you to know, as always, he's in the love business, and he wants you to help spread that love around right now, because he wants you to not only brighten your loved one's day, your mom's day, for instance, he also wants to brighten the day with these sunshine gold dip roses for people that are essential workers, are healthcare workers, and also help the restaurant business in Philadelphia. How good is Steven Singer of Steven Singer Jewelers? He's continuing to use a portion of these proceeds from these roses to support local restaurants by catering meals for our incredible nurses, doctors, first responders, and hospital heroes. Go to IHateStevenSinger.com right now. Send a sunshine gold dip rose this Mother's Day. It's a win-win-win. You'll give a sunshine rose that lasts a lifetime for someone you love. You'll also be supporting local restaurants and thanking essential workers. And you'll feel good about doing it. It's a win-win-win. You can't go wrong. They all come with a lifetime guarantee, free personalized gift message, and fast and free shipping. Simply say, I love you, and honor your mom on Mother's Day. Go to IHateStevenSinger.com. The other corner of 8th and Walnut, IHateStevenSinger.com. All right, let's jump in and talk now. Kevin Kinkead does a great job breaking things down, especially in the world of basketball. So wanted to get his take after this game. What will we really take away from this Nets game that didn't have really any other stars other than Kyrie Irving playing in this one? So without further ado, let's talk to our good friend Kevin Kinkead of CrossingBroad.com. Joining us now on the Zatos Investments guest line from CrossingBroad.com, the great Kevin Kinkead. Kevin, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, Marc. How are you doing? Long time no see.
Yeah, I know, man. We haven't talked for a while. What's wild is the Sixers last night. 6-point win. They were up about 21, and then the air was kind of let out of the balloon. Any cause for concern there, or the Sixers just kind of knew they could put away the Kyrie-led Nets? They could put them away whenever they wanted.
Nah, they kind of fell asleep towards the end there. The bench kind of let them back in, and then they panicked a little bit, like that Lakers game early in the season where they just couldn't execute down the stretch. And they did have some Ben Simmons problems down the stretch with his guy sagging off of him and trying to enter to Joel Embiid in the post when he already had two guys on him. So they just kind of it went off the rails there a little bit, but. A win is a win, right? I think it was just disappointing in general. I think it was bittersweet going into it because, you were looking for that marquee matchup against a good Brooklyn team, see how they match up. It was the rubber match. The series was tied 1-1. This was for first place in the Eastern Conference in the tiebreaker, and we were deprived of the matchup that everybody wanted to see because of, the game in Minnesota being rescheduled from Monday to Tuesday, and then Brooklyn playing on the second night of a road back-to-back. So, it's like, how it is, man. It's like they put you into that scenario where it's like a lose-lose, right? Because if the Sixers win, right, scenario one, if the Sixers win, they were supposed to win.
Yes.
If they lose, it's a horrible loss, and then if they start to melt down at the end and barely hang on to win, then that's what we're talking about the next day, right? So there's nothing, you can't really get anything positive out of it going into it,
I will say this. So you mentioned kind of a narrative that went into the game, and I thought this was fascinating. Doris Burke, when she was just setting up the game, I don't know if you heard this, she referred to Ben Simmons as Joel Embiid's sidekick. and there's his sidekick,
Yeah.
Benson, and I was like, wow. I mean, like, do I detect lies? No, not really. However, I wouldn't refer to him as a sidekick. Like, does that make Kyrie Irving Kevin Durant's sidekick? Like, how does that work? But I thought sidekick wasn't exactly the way I'd put it.
Yeah, I mean, was Scottie Pippen a sidekick? I mean, like, is Ben Simmons a glue guy? Is that a derogatory term? It's so weird because he's like, I think the funny thing, Marc, is like back last year, the year before, everybody was looking at Ben Simmons to be the number 2 star when it came to scoring and whatnot. But the emergence of Tobias Harris this season has kind of changed that narrative a little bit, at least taken some of the burden off of him to score. Mm-hmm. And if you look at what he did last night, the assist to turnover ratio was fantastic early on, defense and him being able to switch. It's going to be huge if they end up playing the Nets in the playoffs because he can guard Durant, Harden, and Kyrie Irving if he has to, so it just feels stupid saying that about him because he's a max player and a number 1 overall draft pick. Like, can a number 1 overall draft pick be a glue guy? But right. The things that he does make everybody around him better. So, I mean, by the loose definition of what that is, I guess you could say he does fit the bill.
Yeah, and we left out one other thing: a 3-time All-Star. It's a 3-time All-Star in that category. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, Shane Battier was a glue guy. He was not a three-time All-Star. So it seems ridiculous on the surface to talk of Ben Simmons that way, but he's a guy who enhances everybody else around him. They just got to figure out what the hell they're doing with him in these late game stages. And look, if Tobias Harris was on the floor, they just throw the ball to Tobias Harris, let him play pick and roll with Joel Embiid, put Ben Simmons down in the dunker spot, and then you don't have that problem with Claxton sagging off of him and kind of junking up the entry pass to Embiid. So that's all schematical stuff that they can take care of down the stretch. But otherwise, Ben is doing what you need him to do.
All right, so this is we gotta spend at least 30 seconds just real quick on the Ben Simmons jump shot whole thing because you're talking about spacing, and we did a whole riff on it yesterday. Yeah. I mean, it would help him as a point guard, point forward, whatever facilitator. If a defender knew he had to come out and guard him, not at the perimeter, but around at least the perimeter, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. I mean, it's a spacing thing. So the way that this manifests itself the most egregiously is like it was last night when you see, what is it in these late game, fourth quarter, slow down half court sets, right? Okay, because you can't have him being the point guard and bringing the ball up if his defender is just going to go 10 feet back from him, right? Because then that junks up Joel Embiid. You can't post Joel Embiid. What the most success that they've had has been Tobias Harris has been on the floor, and he's the guy bringing the ball up and being the pick and roll initiator. And then you stuff Ben Simmons in the dunker spot around the basket because his guy can't leave him if he's under the rim on the weak side, right? So that's really the only feasible spot you can put him in. Again, it seems ridiculous to think that your number 2 player would just be standing in the dunker spot, but based on the way the spacing works out and who's able to handle the ball and where defenders are able to move off of, you can move a defender back from the perimeter. Okay, you can't tell a defender to leave Ben Simmons wide open underneath the basket. So it's really just kind of spatially how it works out. So that's really, if we're talking about if you're trying to advance the jump shot conversation, that's the manifestation of it. What is it in the playoffs in the fourth quarter in the final 2 minutes? That's what it is.
I like that, the manifestation.
It's a good word.
It beats it. It's a lot better than just being like, he's got to shoot the ball. No, he's got to manifest.
But again, I would just say real quickly too, that we would be talking about that more if Tobias Harris hadn't emerged as a second scorer this year, because then the burden would be solely on Embiid and they'd be doubling him every possession. So I think the biggest thing is that Tobias Harris being what he is this year has kind of taken the jump shot conversation and made it from this and taken it down a notch, And
I agree. And I honestly think, and tell me if you agree, I think that's the best thing that Doc Rivers has done in coming here to coach the Sixers is get the absolute most out of Tobias Harris and get what we have been looking for a while is to see those Clippers numbers again from Tobias Harris, which is what we're seeing similar right now.
Well, it sounds like so obvious, but if Ben Simmons can't be the number 2 guy, instead of forcing that square peg into the round hole, just make somebody else the number 2 guy. All right, that's the other way to alleviate the problem, right? Instead of saying like jump shot, maybe you just say to yourself, okay, this is what he is. Okay, so how do we fill that void with somebody else instead? So they did that with Tobias Harris, him being able to stretch, shoot, initiate, pick and roll, back down smaller guys. He's just got this tweener kind of body where he'll back down smaller guys or he'll drive past bigger guys, and that's been huge for them because then that alleviates the burden on Ben Simmons to do something he's not comfortable doing. And maybe it's on us, Marc. I mean, maybe it's on us to just say like, he's never going to be this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, the weird thing about Ben coming in as a rookie, that his floor was an all-star floor. Okay. But the difference now between the floor, the gap between the floor and the ceiling obviously is not very much. So maybe we just have to realize that it is what it is.
See, I think it's just difficult for a Philadelphian and just in this city for someone to go, I came into the game an all-star, and that's fine.
This is what I know.
Yeah, and it's like I could put a little bit more into it. I could sink the free throws like he did in February, that great month he had. Or I could, work a little harder, and maybe I'll advance my game to the point of being an MVP. I think it's the difference between being an all-star, perennial all-star, and being a perennial MVP candidate.
Well, that's the frustration, too, because you look at him and you see greatness. Like, he's a dude who can already pass, rebound, assist, run the floor at an elite level. And you're sitting here thinking, like, man, if he just added this one other thing, he'd be perennial MVP kind of guy. So it's like people got to like understand that we're not, whenever people bring up the jump shot, it's not always coming from this place of negativity. It's coming from this place of like, wow, imagine what he could be with this. It's the one missing piece, But I think that gets spun into this negative thing where it makes it look like we're focusing on the one thing that he doesn't do well instead of the 10 things that he does do well. And, it's unfortunate that it goes that way, but like you said, people see greatness in this guy and they're looking for what the next step is,
Absolutely. Speaking with Kevin Kinkead, crossingbroad.com. You can always check him out there. Check him out on Twitter as well. Kevin, I was watching Joel Embiid tonight, and he had another incredible night, near 40 points and all that. Yeah. He looked like he was very specific about picking and choosing his moments to have those bursts of energy and bursts of aggression to go towards the hoop. I know Doris Burke pointed out during the broadcast, but I kind of saw a very lethargic Joel Embiid throughout this game. Granted, the points were still there, and that just made me think this guy has to be the MVP. This guy has to be the MVP.
No, I know. Like, he didn't even. I don't even think he played that well.
No,
which is like
the thing. And I blinked. He had 30 points.
I know. I looked at because I was going back and forth between you had Phillies and you had the Union and the Sixers were all playing at the same time, and so like when I looked at the halftime score, he had like 30 points or something already. I'm like, geez, but. Doc Rivers said the other night something that I thought made a lot of sense with Joel Embiid was that he wasn't settling in the game that they played the other night. Whereas, he took a bunch of 3-pointers early in this game. He was looking more for fouls instead of just getting fouls in the natural motion of going to the basket as well. But some of the stuff that he does for his size is just absolutely ridiculous. We're talking like Dirk Nowitzki back foot baseline jumpers. We're talking about Hakeem Olajuwon dream shakes into turnaround fadeaways. We're talking about him spinning out of double teams and shooting these like 12-foot baseline. Look, it's crazy because he said the other night, not this game, but the last game, that he feels like he plays more like Kevin Durant, which is insane to think that a 7-footer would play like a combo forward. But if you look at the ways that he's scoring and the variety of the ways that he's doing it, he is indeed playing like a combo forward, which is ridiculous. I know it's such a stupid thing to say. Like, there's nothing profound in me sitting here and saying like, well, let's just take a step back and appreciate what we have here. But when you have something that's right in front of your face all the time, I don't think you necessarily appreciate it for how good it is. And he's having a generational, once in a lifetime, all-time Philadelphia athlete performance this year. And I think you just get so used to it because you see it every night,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you almost take it for granted, unfortunately. But
yeah.
One of the things that always was brought up about Joel Embiid was, why doesn't he play under the basket, 90s center, and go back to that whole thing? And I realized more so than ever, really this year, forget about the 90s center stuff that people had talked about. He's playing like a 90s small forward. Like that's like what his game reminds me of right now, or a 90s shooting guard with all the attributes you just mentioned, and then also incorporating a step back three. Who the hell at 7'2" shoots a step back three?
No, I know. It's funny because, there was a criticism of years past. Like, he's got to get his ass in the low block, because they thought he was taking too many 3-pointers. But now, him spacing it out, it's not even shooting 3-pointers. It's isolation that starts on the perimeter. It's backing. It's being able to catch an entry pass at the 3-point line and then back a guy down into his spot. Before it was like he could only go stand on the low block and you throw him the ball there. Now he can start from these different points that are like 10 feet back from where he was originally starting. I don't think anybody, if you had the bingo card of Philadelphia 76ers changes coming into this year, I don't think anybody would have had Joel Embiid becoming a 3-level scorer on there, but that's where we are, and it's just been like insane to behold.
It really has. I want to ask you about the Nets overall, with a healthy team and all that. Obviously, Sixers win the tiebreak, winning the game last night. So healthy roster. I am hoping. I don't know if I've ever looked forward more to a series I thought they lose. Maybe it was the Sixers going up against the Lakers in 2001 with Allen Iverson and those guys.
Yeah,
I knew they'd lose that series, but I was still looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the Sixers going up against the Nets. I don't think they have enough to beat the Nets, but I think they will absolutely give them a run for their money. And I know the Nets don't want to face the Sixers because of how well they play defensively. How do you see that matchup kind of playing out if that's in fact what does become the Eastern Conference Final?
It's just such a fascinating hypothetical series based on matchups. Everybody says Durant, Harden, Irving. Like, who are you going to put on those guys, right? Okay, so we all know that Seth Curry is probably going to chase Joe Harris around. I would put Ben Simmons on Kevin Durant for size purposes.
So would I, absolutely.
James Harden, who's more of a facilitator and who's kind of made the biggest sacrifice of all those guys, maybe put Tobias Harris on him and let any combination of George Hill or Matisse Thybulle kind of chase Kyrie Irving around. Maybe have guys just kind of funnel him in towards Embiid and he can alter shots in the paint and stuff like that. That's the biggest question you got to ask for the Sixers, but it's completely fair to turn around and ask the Nets, like, who the hell do you have to guard Joel Embiid?
Right. Nobody.
And who do you have to guard Tobias Harris? Because the Nets are the second best offense in the league. They score like 119 a game, but the Sixers score like 114 and they're 10th. Okay. So the Sixers are no slouches either. They score a lot of points. And I don't think, for everybody who says, how are the Sixers going to match up with the Nets on the perimeter? You could just turn around and say, well, who the hell do you have to guard Joel Embiid? So I'm just fascinated. It would be a good chess match between an experienced coach and a not experienced coach to see how they make those adjustments and how they alter their lineups to keep these guys to keep the matchups solidified.
Yeah, I am looking forward to finally seeing George Hill come off the bench and run the second unit. I'm daydreaming about him facilitating with Shake Milton and Dwight Howard getting his 15 minutes or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and that's all you're going to see. It's just going to be those 8 guys, Mark. Because listen, when they played Toronto 2 years ago, who was coming off the bench? James Ennis, Mike Scott, and you had like 4 minutes of Greg Monroe, right? But like you're in that kind of series, assuming you play them in the second round or the third round, you're not going to be rolling any more than 8 guys, So it's going to really be like, how are we going to stagger? How are we going to make sure we have somebody on the floor to guard these guys at the same time? It's going to be like a basketball junkie's dream to watch that kind of playoff series.
No question. Who do you think takes that series? I have to ask you.
I think if the Sixers end up with home court, I think the Sixers beat the Nets in 7.
Yeah, love it. All right, now
I really do.
I'm looking forward to it even more now. Forget anything I said about them losing. You just convinced me. I do want to ask you this because I know you're a big Union guy. I was just talking to some of the people at the Union recently, as a matter of fact. What are you expecting from the Union here in the not-too-distant future?
Well, I didn't expect them to beat the crap out of another team in the Champions League. This is not our grandmother's Philadelphia Union that we knew of many years ago. But look, man, they're fun to watch. They're doing it the right way, quote unquote, the right way. They've got a bunch of local kids on that team. I mean, they've turned the corner in a hard way, and they're a team that's very easy to support now. I mean, they got kids who are from this area. They have interesting foreign signings. They play hard. And the stupid cliche, right? It's a blue collar, hard working, whatever, lunch pail guarantee.
Oh, lunch pail to work, man.
That's what they are, man. They play like a team because they don't have superstars. So, if people haven't really watched them, they tuned out because they were a terrible team over the years. Now's the time to tune back in.
Yeah, I DoorDash my meal to work, I guess. I don't know. Kevin, always great catching up with you, brother. Thanks so much. Man. My best to the family. Kevin Kinkead of Crossing Broad, crossingbroad.com. Obviously, make sure you check out all this stuff. You guys do a great job, and I appreciate you coming on, brother. Thanks so much.
Anytime, man. Just give me a shout, all right?
You got it. Kevin Kinkead joining us on the Zatos Investments guest line. That's right. I can't even believe, and my thanks to Kevin Kinkead one more time. I can't even believe that Doris Burke rolled out that word, sidekick, for Ben Simmons. It was during game intro, basically, and she's doing the little breakdown. And I love Doris Burke, but she's doing a little game breakdown, and there's Joel Embiid's sidekick, or as for his sidekick, Ben Simmons, Doc Rivers thinks he should be the Defensive Player of the Year. I'm like, I'm sorry, what was that? And like Kevin brings up a good point. Well, was Scottie Pippen a sidekick? And I mean, you could say to the greatest player ever, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, and that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. but it's just like I think of the Sixers as having a big three, and I would never describe any other team with a big three. Like the Sixers have Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid, and Ben Simmons. Not in that order. Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, Ben Simmons. And I think of it as a big three. But nobody else's big three would ever in a billion years be described as sidekicks. They'd be described as a super team. Like, was Dwayne Wade LeBron James's sidekick when he was in Miami? I just think the term sidekick, when you're an all-star in your own right, a three-time all-star in particular right now at the age of 25 with Ben Simmons, I feel like sidekick's a little bit of a slight. No? Am I the only person that thinks like that? And here's the thing. I know if Ben Simmons hears sidekick, he ain't going to like that. We were talking yesterday about him following all the social media out there while he was out with COVID protocol and all that. Man, yeah, that would piss him off. So we'll see if that gets back to Ben Simmons. But yeah, I was a little surprised that Doris Burke used that line last night during the game. And after the game as well, if you heard it while the things were wrapping up, they talked about Joel Embiid in the MVP conversation as if he's not in the conversation anymore. As if those 3 weeks really took it away and gives it to Nikola Jokic. So if that's the case, then that sucks. I just don't think it's going to be. I think the case is going to be that Joel Embiid really does win that MVP award, because I think he has been so dominant while he has played this year, so unbelievably dominant while he's played this year, and does things that nobody else does on the court with a 7'2" frame. Then yeah, I think that he's going to get that award. And that's going to mean a lot to the Sixers. It can obviously mean a lot to the Sixers fans. It'll mean a lot to the people that were devout to this day, process supporters. And I think it'll be at least a great reward to show that something came out of this. But we all know we don't give parades in this city for MVP trophies. We give parades in this city for championships, and hopefully that's what happens. We're going to check in our morning. We're going to check in our social media check-in in just a second. But first, I do want to tell you to check out our friends over at Philadelphia Sports Nation, a local Philadelphia sports site covering your favorite teams across blogs and all social media, really. PHLSportsNation.com. That's PHLSportsNation.com. Philadelphia Sports Nation, enhancing your Philadelphia sports fan experience. So make sure you check them out, PHLSportsNation.com. How about DraftKings? Basketball teams entering the final month of the season. In the final month of the season, right now what they're trying to do is gear up for the playoffs. Some teams are locked, some teams not so much. Sixers just locked up. At least right now, they've locked up home court advantage as long as they win that number one spot in the Eastern Conference. But if you're going to get in on all this action, make sure you do it with DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app. They're now putting you in the center of the action with a chance to turn $1 into $100 in free bets. Turning $1 into $100 is simple. Pick any basketball team to win their next game, and if during that game, the team of your choosing hits a three, you bring home $100 in free bets. That's right, $100, 100-to-1 odds on the team if you're choosing just to hit a three. It's the modern NBA. Of course, that's going to happen. This year, teams have been hitting threes at an unprecedented rate, so get in on the action with DraftKings. Safe, secure, reliable, and you can deposit and withdraw your funds at your convenience. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code Farzy. That's promo code Farzy to sign up and get $1. Turn $1 into $100 in free bets if the basketball team of your choosing simply hits a three. Use promo code Farzy to turn $1 into $100 in free bets for a limited time only at DraftKings. Must be 21 or older. Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Restrictions apply in partnership with Meadows Racetrack and Casino. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook. For details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. We're always telling you about our friends at Zatos Investments. Why not get in on the action with Zatos Investments when it comes to the action in the real estate game in Philadelphia? You can learn how you can invest with Zatos and also see some of their properties around the city. They have top-of-the-line custom homes ranging from small single-family rehabs to ground-up new construction townhomes and condo buildings. They're killing in the Philadelphia real estate game right now. Zatos works closely with their private investor base to provide them with substantial returns on their investment, ranging from 20 to 40%. These guys, like I said, killing it in the Philadelphia real estate game. So to see some of their properties and learn how you too can invest with Zatos, visit them at ZatosInvestments.com, or you can shoot them an email at info@ZatosInvestments.com. Had a great conversation with our friends at FanUp yesterday. They're just doing it's a startup app They're doing amazing with this app. You got to check it out. Download the app, the FanUp app in the App Store, and you too could make challenges. You could make bets with your friends. You could squat up with your friends because the days of playing fantasy sports are over. Playing them alone, over. DraftKings Sportsbook is great. FanUp is fantastic for issuing personal challenges with friends of your own right. You can make a challenge up, challenge your friend. It's like putting a gentleman's bet, if you will. You can win brand prizes. You can rise on their leaderboard. It's a great time. You can also go on there, talk trash with your friends as well. I had a bet with Tobias Harris and Ben Simmons last night. And I cashed out for me, and I beat my buddy Kerry on that app. So make sure you download the FanUp app right now in the App Store and let the best fan win. If you go to the App Store right now and download the FanUp app, use promo code FanUp and get 2,000 bonus points. That's 2,000 bonus points with FanUp. May the best fan win. All right, without further ado, let's check in on our social media check-in brought to you by our friends at Steak and Maine and steakandmaine.com. Following our YouTube comments, Matt's just checking in saying, Farzy, hey, what's happening, Matty? What's popping? Mally, always a pleasure. Steve's checking in there. Sean, good morning, fam. Good morning. What's happening? Brett's checking in. Marc, I'll take 20% of their salary and play 200% more. In a reference to the NBA, I agree with you. That ain't so good. That's not so nice. When you look at exactly what's been going on in the NBA, resting players, trying to find ways around resting players, especially with rules prohibiting you from doing that in a season that a lot of GMs, like I mentioned earlier, are critiquing for how grueling it's been. A lot of back-to-backs on there. Yeah, I think a lot of us would play for 20% of their salary and play a lot more. KD and Harden, yes, rest is trash. Mally, God bless you. And I'm not necessarily saying you're far off. I think Kyrie's pretty damn good at basketball. I think he showed that last night, though. That's one thing I will say. Marc, I have a better chance of scoring with my wife. This is from Mac. Marc, I have a better chance of scoring with my wife than the Phillies have of scoring. I feel like at this point, that's how I feel at this point. And my wife doesn't touch me unless it's my birthday or Valentine's Day. Well, Mac, let me tell you. Go to Steven Singer Jewelers. All right, buddy? All right, it might help you out right there. Max also saying either or, no doubting, not doubling up in 1 year. Have some confidence, Mac. Have some confidence. We need a real center fielder. I agree with you. Here's what I'm shocked. Even if you have, let's say, Roman Quinn, who's not young. I think he's 28 now. So he doesn't have a lot of Major League Baseball experience because he's been injured so often. But he's still somebody that you want to see what he has, right? Even if you're going to go with younger guys and Roman Quinn to see what you have, don't you normally have a veteran outfielder? Don't you bring in somebody? If you knew you were going to have, like, let's put it this way. Odubel Herrera had an okay spring training. Like, if you just look for spring training, he's good. The spring training, he's just good enough, and he's also a former All-Star. Just think about it objectively for a second here. If you're the Phillies, if you really thought Odubel Herrera was going to have a decent spring training, or if he did have a decent spring training, you would think he'd earn his way on the opening day roster. The Phillies thought he was so far off because of his basically the last time you saw him play baseball, he batted .222. So you're looking at him going, all right, well, even if he has a good spring, you're still not going to have him on the opening day roster. So where's somebody else? Where's another veteran that you would bring in to at least stabilize your center field spot? Phillies don't have that guy. So even when I said yesterday, and I tweeted out the day before that the Phillies do not have a legit center fielder in their organization, who's the guy you go, nope, yep, no matter what, that guy's going to come in and ready the ship or steady the ship. That's what I mean by legitimate center fielder. Nobody. I am hoping Mickey Moniak blows our doors off. I am hoping Mickey Moniak shuts up all the haters that wanted to judge him at 17 years old. I wasn't one of those guys. I followed him throughout his career in the minor leagues. I interviewed him myself, went out to Reading to interview him when he was there, when he had just bulked up. I mean, he looks like a man now. He doesn't look like a little kid. So I'm hoping he blows our doors off in the center field spot for the Phillies. I really do. And it justifies that number one overall pick. That's what I'm crossing my fingers for. I think we all are, especially now that he's, 22 years old, 23 years old. So let's hope that happens. But what's so odd to me is that he didn't bring in anybody in the offseason to say, all right, you know what? We know we're going to have struggles with Odubel, even if we have him. Scott Kingery is probably going to have to start out in the minor leagues to get his swing back. Adam Hazley and Roman Quinn. That's the ticket. Nobody that you can go, at least they have this one guy that can at least be a defensive replacement. Not one. Mickey Moniak, please be that guy. So I'm with you there. JD Harrison's checking in saying it's ugly, Mark. I feel like we bring back Aaron Rowand. Wow. Has his face healed yet? Who else we got? Thomas, you think you're swinging? You don't think you're swinging the bats well? They're not swinging the bats well. Who else we got? Perhaps that you're not swinging the bat. All right. This is the problem. This is live. Sometimes it's live. It's always live, actually. Swinging the bat's great. I feel like it was an argument. Okay, sorry. What else we have here? Plenty to go around here when it comes to criticism of the Phillies offense and Joel Embiid being the MVP. Let's see. Tobias Harris is an actor now. Tobias Harris is a phenomenal actor. And going into last night's game, those commercials were the best thing that we had going for us. That and Joel Embiid playing. Rob saying, who do the Nets have to cover Joel Embiid? The answer to that question is nobody. Absolutely nobody. Henry's checking in. What's the union? Come on, brother. Respect that soccer team. What else do we have here? I saw Farzi's last tweet last night saying that too. Ha, ha, ha. Rob, thank you for checking out my tweet regarding Joel Embiid and all that stuff. Mac is saying he's confident in not getting any. Mac, come on. So we talk the misses a little bit. Go to Steven Singer Jewelers. No big deal. That might turn things around for you. Thanks to everyone. Follows the show on social media and checks in on YouTube with your comments. Make sure you subscribe on our YouTube channel as well. Time for our morning rush. I mentioned that our morning rush brought to you by Sky Motorcars and SkyMotorcars.com. And in case I didn't say it, our social media check-in is brought to you by our good friends at Steak and Maine, steakandmaine.com. But as far as our morning rush, Bucks last night, they beat the Timberwolves 130-105 without Giannis Antetokounmpo. So that's a pretty good night for them. I did mention the Doris Burke thing. David Peterson last night, starting pitcher for the New York Mets, is the guy that made the Phillies look silly. 10 strikeouts, matched a career high. I mentioned that the Phillies earlier in the show were 17th in Major League Baseball right now, and probably over the last week, dead last in offense. Right now, this Phillies team looked so bad last night, and I think it was Ricky Batalico that pointed it out on the postgame show on NBC Sports Philadelphia, that this Phillies offense was so bad. How bad was it? That Zach Wheeler was your best hitter going into last night's game, going by batting average. Now, you might say it's not fair. He had one good game, whatever. The pitcher had the best batting average in your lineup last night. Good God, y'all. This offense sucks. And better find a way to snap out of it. It's a shame they faced Jacob deGrom today going up against Zach Eflin. So maybe today's not the day. But at some point in the not-too-distant future, I'd like to see the Phillies bat snap out of it. Unfortunately, they're facing Jacob deGrom, who's got a 0.64 ERA, so that's fun. What else do we have here? We got a lot going on. We got tip of the cap, by the way. Tip of the cap to Carlos Rodon, the starting pitcher for the Chicago White Sox, who last night pitched a no-no. This would drive me crazy because I have this type of personality to focus on the bad. And this is on me. For other people, I'm the most optimistic person in the world. For me, I tend to err not on the side of pessimism, but on the side of concentrating more so and focusing on more so what went wrong as opposed to what's going right. The guy pitched a no-hitter. Let me rephrase that. The guy only pitched a no-hitter last night because he had a perfect game with 2 outs to go and then threw a ball off a guy's foot. Costing him the perfect game, still got the no-hitter. He was excited. Good for Carlos Rodon. Happy for the guy. I'm just saying is all. I would be losing sleep over the fact that I almost had a perfect game. I'd be excited. I got a no-hitter. Cool. But I wouldn't be excited. I'd be focusing on the fact that I didn't have the perfect game. That's just me. And maybe I'm a curmudgeon for that, but yeah, unfortunately, that's not the case. He didn't get the perfect game. He got the no-hitter. It didn't seem to bother him too much. He seemed like a guy that was having a lot of fun playing baseball last night. That's for sure. I also caught a little bit of him with SVP on SportsCenter, and he didn't give a damn. I wish I had that mentality. I wish I had that perspective. And then again, I'm pretty sure I'll never throw a no-hitter in the big league. So probably I don't know how to. I know I'd probably my face might explode if I was that excited as he was last night to pitch a no-hitter in Major League Baseball. But I'm just saying, it's all just my personality. I'd probably focus on the fact that I didn't have a perfect game, and that's just me. Hopefully, it's just me. Also, 114 pitches through his 9 innings of work last night, so good for him on that. Let's move ahead. Real quick, also, as part of our Morning Rush segment, This also happened in last night's game, and I touched on it a little bit last night or earlier in the show. George Hill took part in the shoot-around and got some reps in before the game last night. Still no timetable for when he is going to actually join the Sixers. I just can't wait to finally see it because as we talked about with Kevin Kinkead, that's going to be your rotation in the playoffs. George Hill is going to be running the second unit. Shake Milton is going to be able to be more of that traditional shooting guard and not have to worry about running the offense with the second unit. So I really like the two-man game that developed with Shake Milton and Dwight Howard. And you only saw a little bit of that throughout the season. You saw it in the preseason a lot, and I couldn't wait to see it during the regular season. But you'd seen little spurts of that. I feel like the two-man game between Dwight Howard and George Hill in the second unit is going to be great. I think Shake Milton's going to get open. I think he's going to get his shots. I think he'll be the kick-out guy. But in terms of watching George Hill try to have that dribble drive penetration and loft it up to Dwight Howard for some alley-oops and loft it up to Dwight Howard for some post-up moves as well, I really look forward to seeing that in the second unit when George Hill actually joins this team to play some basketball games. So here's what I'm saying. Last night you saw a Nets team play without their stars, obviously. They just had Kyrie Irving. Well, I feel like with the way this second unit is going to be for the Sixers, it's going to be a hard match. With as good and as deep as the Nets are going to be when everybody's healthy and everyone mans up and plays in the postseason, I just feel like the Sixers are going to have a lot of depth that people are kind of looking past. And overall, that bench, I think, is going to be an X factor for the Sixers. But I think the marquee thing, because everyone's going to talk about the defense matching up against the Nets in the playoffs. Everyone's going to talk about what the Sixers can do defensively speaking. And Ben Simmons even mentioned that the other day when he said the Nets, yeah, there's only one ball to go around on offense, and you still got to play defense. So we know what Ben's getting at there. Everyone's going to focus on the defensive aspect of this. But the other aspect, the other X factor, I think is going to be Seth Curry and Danny Green. If those guys are hitting their shots, then you're going to feel a lot different about the Sixers' outcome. Defensively, I've said always, all along, that the Nets don't want this smoke. They don't want the Sixers in the playoffs. But if they do match up, and you have Danny Green and Seth Curry hot from beyond the arc, that's going to change everything. Because you know you're going to have the dominance down low because they got nobody to answer for Joel Embiid, nobody to guard him down low. So you know that's going to be there for you. If you get that consistent shooting from the outside, then you're talking about a much different series. Then you're talking about the odds going heavily in favor of the 76ers in that regard. So I hope that's the case. I hope that's what we see from the Sixers as the playoffs get closer and closer. But I am definitely rooting for that Nets-Sixers matchup for the Eastern Conference Finals. That was our Morning Rush segment brought to you by our good friends at Sky Motorcars and SkyMotorcars.com. Big bets. I didn't make one big bet last night. I made a couple of small bets last night. Now, here's me. I didn't write down what I did yesterday, what I said I was going to do during the show. So I know I mentioned two games for you yesterday, and that was the Pelicans game and the Hornets game. Pelicans took on the Knicks. Hornets took on the Cavs. I was trying to take advantage of the Cavs being terrible at basketball. It wasn't the case. So I bet both, and I lost both. So I'm a big fat idiot today. Hornets sucked. They were +1 going up as the Cavs. They lost by 13. Thanks a lot there, Hornets. Pelicans, they also sucked. They were -2.5 going up against the Knicks. Knicks took care of business against them. They won by 10 points, 116-106. But the big bet I made, the biggest bet I made last night, I looked at Joel Embiid's over-under. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, Joel Embiid's line was at 28.5 on his point total for last night. And I thought, he's got that. So I put a couple of bucks on Joel Embiid to hit the over last night. He obviously did that in the third quarter, and the rest of the game was gravy from that point on. That was my big bet last night. The game that I do like tonight, I'm going to go ahead and, those Cavs, they can't keep it going. Oh, no. Both teams coming off a back-to-back, the Warriors and the Cavs. Warriors visiting the Cleveland Cavaliers. Warriors going off at a -7.5 going into the game tonight. I like the Warriors covering that. The Warriors are coming off a performance, in case you didn't see it. The Warriors scored 147 points last night. Steph Curry had 42 of those points. The Warriors scored 50 points. 50 points last night in the third quarter. That's pretty remarkable. So I like the Warriors covering, continuing a little hot streak here for them. I like the Warriors covering against the Cavs -7.5. That's my big bet by DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app. Before we get out of here, let's just hear it one more time. Music to my ears. Thanks for watching the show, everybody. Thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe on our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching on Twitch, on YouTube, on Twitter as well, Facebook Live, all over the place. Appreciate you guys. Again, make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Have a great rest of your day. Jim Hyden produced the program. This is a Buzz Sports and Entertainment production. I'm Marc Farzy. I'll be back with you tomorrow on a little Farzy in the Field Friday, brought to you by our great friends at FanUp. See you back here at the Steven Singer Studios tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Take it easy.